So, John, I've heard this story a couple of times, and it always gives me a little bit of pleasure when you tell it. But tell me how your case helped to bring down Richard Nixon. Tell our watchers.
Oh man, that's a hell of a story.
I know. That's why I love it when you tell it.
That's the greatest.
I don't know if I can get it all together at once.
I'm gonna mute myself.
Well, in maybe it was September 1968, somewhere in there. I forget when it was. Somebody blew up Ann Arbor's CIA recruiting office on the campus of the university, just off the campus. Well, the fact that they had this recruiting office was highly illegal. The CIA was not supposed to have any dealings inside the United States at all. So these guys, who I happen to know, wanted to call attention to the fact that the CIA was recruiting people on the U of M campus where we were based. So they put a stick of dynamite in the doorway of their building. And it caused a minor explosion. And when the police came, it came out in the reports that it was a CIA office. So that was a great thing from my perspective. But then in September of '69, I was indicted along with two other guys for conspiring to blow up the CIA office. I didn't have anything to do with it. Not that I wasn't proud of it. I was glad to know the guys who did it, but it wasn't me. There was a meeting that was cited in the indictment of me that said I was there at the meeting, but it wasn't me, it was another guy. It was a mistaken identity. I know that sounds crazy, but I was indicted under this mistaken identity. Well, I was already in prison for 2 joints of marijuana, 9.5 to 10-year sentence in Michigan. This is a federal case. So the other 2 guys were Lawrence Pun-Plamondon, my partner in the White Panther Party, and a guy named Jack Forrest, who was in the Detroit White Panther Party. And Pun was actually charged with being the bomber. David Valor was a guy in Detroit called President Dave because in '68 he ran for president as a hippie in the LSD ticket. And he got busted for weed. And he was the guy who had a little gang of people who were blowing up shit all over Detroit. Draft boards, school boards, you know, they were nuts. And telling him, boasting about it. Well, he got busted for that too. So he said that me, Pon, and Jack Forrest, who was his friend, had conspired to blow up the Ann Arbor CIA office. Well, we were arraigned. We got the great Hugh M. Buck Davis Jr. of Detroit as our main counsel, fresh out of law school. And we had the assistance of the 2 great New York attorneys named William Kunstler and Leonard Weinglass. And they helped us, and they fronted for it because they could get the publicity that we needed. Whenever we had a charge, we thought we'd better fight it in the newspapers and television because it was the only chance we had to get our point across to the people. So we had these guys in an automatic. They had just come from the Chicago 7 trial, Chicago 8. And so they were in the news. So this got a lot of attention to our case. And they're brilliant legal people as well. So one of the things he did was develop a list of what they call interrogatories to ask whether the government had done this or that, whether they had obtained any, one of them was whether they obtained any evidence through wiretaps on the defendants. One of our motions, pre-trial motions, was to disclose this. One was to dismiss the jury panel because nobody under 24 could be on the jury. And that was our constituency, was people under 24. So we said we couldn't possibly get a jury of our peers because they weren't allowed to be on a jury then. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on at such length, but this is a long story.
Okay, keep going, man.
So on the issue of the wiretap, our judge, the late great Damon Keith of Detroit Federal District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan, ruled that if the government had obtained any information on any of us through wiretaps, they had to disclose this. Well, the government came back and said, yeah, we have information on defendant Pomandin that we got on the wiretap, but it was on a source that we can't disclose for national security purposes. Well, it turned out that Richard M. Nixon and his Justice Department, so-called under, what was that asshole's name? Mitchell, John N. Mitchell, and his chief deputy in this wiretap, national security wiretap, was the guy who went on to become the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, William Rehnquist. Rehnquist devised this fucking strategy that you could put wiretaps on people if you said that they were a menace to national security.
Wow.
Without any proof or without any warrants or anything. Distinct violation of the Constitution. So we raised these protests, and Judge Keith agreed with us. And he said, there's no such thing as a warrantless wiretap under the US Constitution. So you're gonna have to disclose this, who was it on and what did they say? He said, well, we can't do it because of national security. So he said, well, I'm gonna drop the case. So he dropped the case against us. The government appealed his decision. That was a very rare thing to do. But they were trying to get this warrantless wiretap thing established as law. This was Rehnquist's strategy. Well, our appeal went through the Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, and they denied us, and then they affirmed us. And so it went to the Supreme Court. Well, interesting things happened there that I need to say. One was that the Solicitor General of the United States, Erwin Griswold, refused to argue Nixon's case because it was so cockamamie. And it was so kind of, so the Solicitor General of the United States refused to represent the president. I thought that was the greatest. And so this idiot named Robert Mardian out of the Justice Department, he had to argue in front of the Supreme Court. We had the leading constitutional lawyer of the left. Oh man, now my mind's gone. Bill, I know him as Bill. He represented us in the Supreme Court. He argued brilliantly. They presented a brilliant written argument. Robert Mardian argued for the president. He was a clown. He bumbled his way through. The Supreme Court justices almost were laughing at the guy. They were tormenting him with questions. In the end, and Rehnquist had just been named to the Supreme Court, but he couldn't sit on my case because he had been the architect of the other side. So we won 8-0 in the Supreme Court. I was there. And I was on a Friday. And they ruled that there was no such thing as a warrantless wiretap, and that if the government had any of these, they were going to prosecute them. Well, they didn't announce the verdict on Friday. They didn't announce it until Monday. The speculation is that Justice Rehnquist called John Mitchell and his colleagues in the Justice Department and told them about the decision that it would be coming out on Monday, and that if they had any wiretaps out, they'd better remove them so on Monday they could say they didn't have any. And that Saturday was when they broke into the Watergate to take out the wiretaps on the Democratic National Headquarters. So we felt we I didn't know this until 20 years later.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know about it for 20 years. And
I appreciate that shit.
didn't know.
Because I watched him
That's
resign
awesome.
and shit. You know, I was a teenager. I watched that shit come down on TV, and that was some heavy shit. Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Of
Yeah.
all the different things.
We'd have it with this clown they got now by now, but no.
Well, you're gonna have to. Maybe you got to get involved.
Yeah,
You might have to step in and do
I
something,
already
John.
voted. I
This
voted.
solicitor- This Solicitor General is certainly not going to refuse to.
right now
Yeah.
for the Democratic Party because I'm a registered Democrat.
Well, I thank you for sharing that story. That's why I love to get
Oh,
it on
yeah.
tape. I've heard it verbally. I didn't know if we had it on tape anywhere, but now we do.
Great.
And
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's a long story. Send me a copy so I can put it in my archives.
oh, I'm going to
Beautiful.
take this show. I'll cut it up just to have that story. I've already done one.
I could, you know, I brag about my role in the marijuana, overturning the marijuana laws, but I never bragged about this because it was an ancillary issue.
It's very cool, though. It's very cool.
Yeah, I'd brag about that right now, but I didn't really have anything to do with it. But I was part
was
of the
evil.
orchestra.
Yeah, he was an evil, evil
Your
man.
case was the precedent.
Oh man,
Yes.
he was awful.
I mean-
President.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about
There's the Supreme Court Chief Justice. That was the beginning of the end for the Supreme Court, which
Yeah.
now they're trying to shred it completely.